He's still attacking MAGA. That's the headline, the refrain, the desperate attempt to flip the script. Attacking MAGA, as if the movement is sitting around in smoke-filled rooms, plotting how to capitalize on the murder of Charlie Kirk. But the truth is simpler, is rawer, and much harder to spin. MAGA isn't capitalizing. MAGA is mourning. Mourning a man who built a legacy. Mourning a voice silenced, and mourning a movement mocked in its most vulnerable moment. The left calls it opportunism, but what it really is defense against those who want to rewrite history before the body is even cold. For once, conservatives are fighting back, and the establishment simply doesn't know how to process it. They're used to silence, used to acquiescence, used to an opposition that bows its head. But not this time. Into this storm steps late-night comedy. A world built on canned laughter, safe jokes, and smug monologues that sound like they were stitched together from Twitter feeds. And standing at the very center of that world is Jimmy Kimmel, the self-anointed clown prince of politics. For years, he's made a career out of sneering at conservatives, tossing cheap shots like candy, basking in applause from an audience trained to clap on cue. But when reality barges through the studio doors, when a tragedy like Charlie Kirk's death collides with the glossy sheen of late night, suddenly, the jokes stop sounding like comedy and start sounding like contempt. What do you get when late night comedy collides with a reality check? Picture this: Megyn Kelly storming into Jimmy Kimmel's carefully curated kingdom, not with a polite smile or a rehearsed segment, but with the energy of someone who just discovered her Netflix password had been stolen and used to binge-watch reality shows. That's the level of fury, sharpness, and precision she brought. Jimmy wasn't ready. He's used to politicians brushing off his jokes. He's used to celebrities shrugging through his monologues. What he wasn't used to was someone walking into his house and flipping the lights on, exposing just how thin his comedic armor had become. Because this wasn't banter. This wasn't harmless late-night chatter. This was a roast on steroids, a cultural demolition. A public execution of Jimmy's credibility and Megyn Kelly. Didn't even break a sweat. The weekend leading up to it was already a low point. The MAGA crowd, still raw with grief, was being painted as vultures. The narrative being pushed was clear. They were twisting Charlie Kirk's murder into political capital. Yet while conservatives mourned, while families lowered their heads, the finger-pointing began. Late night chimed in, the press chimed in, and Jimmy Kimmel sat smirking like the arbiter of morality. Pretending grief was a prop and tragedy a punchline. The White House flew the flag at half-staff, drawing both praise and scorn, but Jimmy couldn't resist. He mocked, he lectured, he positioned himself as the voice of reason while making conservatives out to be villains. It was the final straw, Megyn. Kelly didn't just push back. She bulldozed the stage. She laid out every hypocrisy, every double standard, every smug chuckle that had defined Kimmel's career for years. She reminded America that Jimmy isn't funny anymore, not in the way that counts. His comedy has aged like milk left out in the sun, curdled and sour. What once might have passed as satire now comes across as bitter lectures, dressed up as jokes. His audience doesn't laugh because it's funny. They laugh because they're told to. Jimmy tried to defend himself with his usual tricks-awkward laughter, tugging at his suit jacket, smirking at his own punchlines. But Megyn wasn't having it. Her verbal jabs weren't the kind you could laugh off. They were precise, cutting, and deliberate. Watching her dismantle Jimmy was like watching a gold medal fighter in the ring with a man who didn't even train. Every time he swung, she countered. Every time he smiled, she smirked harder. The imbalance was glaring. ABC, already in a tailspin over late night's collapsing ratings, couldn't contain the damage. The Hollywood Reporter whispered about firings. The Wall Street Journal mentioned panic behind the scenes. CNN speculated about replacements. The phones at ABC headquarters rang non-stop as executives scrambled. The vibe shift, as Megyn called it, wasn't just cultural, it was existential. For years, networks banked on late night as the safe, profitable corner of entertainment. But with each sneering anti-Trump monologue, with each cheap laugh at conservative expense, the audience thinned. Now with Kimmel humiliated, ABC wasn't just worried about one host, they were worried about the entire business model. Megyn's takedown wasn't just about Jimmy, it was about the rot infecting late night as a whole. From The View in the morning to Kimmel at night, the programming had been painted with the same smug brush. But audiences weren't laughing anymore. They were tuning out. The culture had shifted. What used to be edgy now felt stale. What used to be rebellious now felt corporate. And Jimmy Kimmel, more than anyone, embodied that decline. When Jimmy tried to turn the attack back on MAGA, when he insisted conservatives were capitalizing on Charlie Kirk's death, Megyn cut him down with brutal clarity. She laid out the facts, the hypocrisy, the twisted narrative. The shooter, far from being MAGA, had been radicalized in the opposite direction. His politics weren't conservative, they were leftist. His ideology wasn't maggot, it was progressive. Even his parents admitted it. The evidence was written on the bullets themselves. And yet Jimmy stood there, insisting otherwise, refusing to acknowledge reality because reality didn't fit his script. The more he spoke, the smaller he looked. The more he smirked, the more desperate he sounded. By the time Megyn was done, Jimmy wasn't just embarrassed, he was exposed. His comedy, his credibility, his entire persona as late night's moral authority had been torched. The audience wasn't laughing at his jokes anymore. They were laughing at him. Social media exploded. Clips of Megyn's dismantling spread like wildfire. Twitter lit up with memes. TikTok teens stitched videos with Mortal Kombat sound effects. Even people who hadn't watched late night in years